Greetings, gentlemen and ladies. I am the old school game snob, and today we are taking a look at a classic old build. This is the Meteorb Sorceress. This is both Frozen Orb and Meteor and Fireball. Versatility is the name of the game when it comes to the Meteorb Sorceress. She can handle most areas decently well. I would not call her an S-tier build, but she's a fun build, and she's capable of dealing with problems that come up. Her Fireball is quite efficient at clearing out monsters. Her Frozen Orb is decently efficient. She's also, of course, got Meteor. I don't use Meteor all that much myself, just because it's kind of janky to get that Meteor to fall where I want it to fall. Fireball just seems to do the trick better. But hey, it's up to you. This is the Meteorb Sorceress, and Meteor is part of the name. So hey, I'll talk about the differences between Fireball and Meteor, and you can decide what you like best for yourself. Anyway, let's take a closer look. Let's kick things off in the cold tree, because then the fire tree will make a little bit more sense in terms of point distribution. 20 points into Frozen Orb, 1 point into Frozen Armor, just because of the bang for your buck that you get out of that 1 point into Frozen Armor. It's worth it. And then I have a few points into Cold Mastery. At the moment I've got 7 points invested. Now, Cold Mastery is something that you really don't need much more than about 150% to minus enemy cold resistance. And that is because in Hell difficulty, most of the monsters you face will have anywhere between like 0 and 50% cold resistance. And the best case you can hope for is minus 100% enemy cold resistance. So if you have 150% to enemy cold resistance and you're dealing with a monster that only has 25 cold resistance, you're not going to go any beyond that minus 100 points. And so, like I say, I've looked up the stats and the graphs and the details, and basically, on average, monsters in Hell have somewhere between 0 and 50% cold resistance. So minus 150 is a fairly optimal amount of cold mastery to shoot for. And so the thing is, though, as you kind of level up this character and gain more skiller charms, gain more gear, this cold mastery will increase as well with that if you get more cold skiller charms or something like that, right? So you can get your cold mastery up in some other ways. Cold mastery is not a synergy with Frozen Orb. It doesn't require hard points to be invested into it, and so for that reason I'm only going to put a few base points into it for now, and instead I'm going to focus on the fire tree to get that Fireball up, that Meteor up, to get all that damage up from the fire side of things instead. Okay, and this is the part, right? Like the guide is Meteorb build, right? And so we have to have Meteor points. That being said, I'm gonna share with you my preference, and you can choose for yourself what you like better, right? Okay, so Fireball is my preference over Meteor. Now, of course, Fireball has a synergy with Meteor, and both of them have a synergy with Firebolt, and of course, Fire Mastery increases damage as well. If you don't like Meteor and you just want a Fire Orb Sorceress instead, like a Fireball Orb Sorceress, then I would suggest rolling this a little differently. But let's first talk about the Meteorb version of this. Alright, so basically 20 points into Meteor, 20 points into Fireball. I've got 20 points into Firebolt as well, and that's because, like I say, I'm kind of favoring the Fireball myself. But if you favor Meteor, and if you like using Meteor a lot, instead of Firebolt, you'll want to instead get your Fire Mastery up. Fire Mastery will give you more damage for every point to your Meteor as compared to Firebolt, whereas Firebolt will give Fireball more damage for every point as compared to Fire Mastery. Or in other words, if you want to max out your Fireball, if that's your preference, then you put your 20 points into Fireball, your 20 points into Firebolt, and your 20 points into Meteor, with whatever is left over going into Fire Mastery. On the other hand, if you like that Meteor spell better, 20 points into Meteor, 20 points into Fireball, 20 points into Fire Mastery, and then whatever you have left over could go into Firebolt. Now that would be just to get your Fireball spell up some more. That would be to get your Meteor spell up some more in damage. You could also optionally put some of those leftover points into Cold Mastery and just get that up a little bit more. So you can kind of find your optimal balance, kind of depending on where you like to farm and where you feel a little more damage is needed. Sometimes the best thing to do is go and play test an area and say, hey, does this feel weak and underpowered? Do I need a little bit more into it? Find where the balance actually is and what works really well. Okay, here's the reason that I like Fireball instead of Meteor, and it comes down to the way Frozen Orb and Fireball get along together. So with Frozen Orb, I can immediately, with Frozen Orb, I can immediately start throwing some Fireballs. Frozen Orb, Fireballs. Frozen Orb comes off cooldown, Fireballs. On the other hand, if I want to do a Frozen Orb, my Meteor is on the same cooldown, so I have to do one, I have to do the other. These two do not really play that well together, unfortunately. It would be kind of cool if they both had their own separate timers. This build would suddenly become really a lot more viable as maybe more of an S tier. I would call it an A tier build at the moment, but it might even become more of an S tier if those cooldown timers were adjusted around a little bit. In the meantime, yeah, Frozen Orb and Fireball work really well, and also targeting Fireball, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I find it quite a lot easier, and almost seems like the damage is faster too, right? Because you just get those Fireballs out so fast as compared to that rather slow wait time on that Meteor, right? Like 1, 2, 3. So anyways, you guys can choose what you like better. For me, it's Fireball. So like I said, this is the budget build, and actually it's a very easy build to put together. You have, like I say, big chance of finding magic items, even with your Crystal Sword version, still around 250% chance. Swap over to that Gull Dagger and you're getting close to 350% chance. My Gull Dagger has an IST socketed in it, so you can subtract 30% from that if you don't have an IST. But Gull Dagger is great, plus 100% to magic item find, and very easy to use, no dexterity requirement, really no nothing to use. So yeah, very easy, plus 100 magic find. I also have a gambling guide on how to find a gold dagger quite easily. So if you don't have a gold dagger and you want one, check that one out. The main thing that we're shooting for here in our gear balance is that 105% faster cast rate. Now, as you can see, you can take out the Crystal Sword in this gear config, and I still have 115% left. Mage Fist are really nice, obviously, to that faster cast, to that fire skills. Since we are a fire cold sorceress, fire skills is nice. You could also probably swap those out for chance guards if you want even more magic find and you don't care about that 105 breakpoint. If you're happier with the next notch down, which is still perfectly reasonable, that's fine. Serpent Skin of the Viper Magi, socketed with a perfect topaz. Harlequin Crest, also socketed with a perfect topaz. I've got a nice 20% FCR amulet here, crafted amulet, but you don't need 20%. 10% would also be just enough. We'd still have that 105% FCR breakpoint. Spirit Shield, optional Spirit Sword, depending if you want a little more damage or if you want a little more magic find. I've got the War Travelers. I've also got one Nagel Ring and one faster cast rate ring with some extra mana on it. The mana is nice because the mana currently on this configuration is pretty low. As you can see, we weren't struggling for mana at all, but it is a little bit low, and to get that mana up a little bit helps with how quickly your Mercenary's Insight pole arm will regenerate your mana overall. And speaking of our Mercenary, we have Insight on our pole arm. We also have a nice Treachery rune word. This is a really great and fairly affordable rune word that just really helps your Mercenary to survive, really do well. 45% increased attack speed, that is huge. And for his helmet, I'm using Andariel's Visage, but you could also use Talrasha's Horadric Crest or the Crown of Thieves, something with a nice big lifesteal, because lifesteal is your Mercenary's way to stay alive, and we want him alive because we want that insight aura to keep ticking away. So that is basically the gear. Like I say, very budget, very magic find focused, not a lot of it that really goes into making this character more powerful. So there's a lot of room to grow and improve this character's gear. But yeah, like I say, budget build and very effective in a lot of areas. So let's check out some of those areas actually and see where this character does well. So we've already taken a look at the Moo farm. Pretty good clear speeds, not, as fast as someone like the Blizzard Sorceress or the Lightning Fury Javazon or anything like that. But decent, pretty decent. I would put her, right in the C rating for cow clear speed, just because her DPS is a little bit low. Like I say, we're budget. This could improve quite a bit as well. Outer Cloister, head down to the pit. This is actually quite a good area for this character to farm. That is because in this area there are multiple immunities, but we have multiple elemental damage sources. So we're able to deal with those multiple immunities, depending on if we have cold's immunes or fire's immunes. Then we can choose what we like best. And if we have lightning immunes, well, we can mix and match and deal out all sorts of delicious damage. Alright, so anyway, the pit is a good spot for this area. It might even be one of her best spots. It is probably where I would farm the most if I was using this character, just because, like I say, she's kind of an A tier build, maybe not S tier, somewhere like Chaos Sanctuary, especially considering her fairly budget gear, would be difficult. The Eldritch, the Rectifier, oops, that's the wrong element. The Eldritch, the Rectifier, and Pindleskin Run is also a really good one for this character. She has no problem taking out Eldritch and his gang. Well, almost no problem taking out Eldritch and his gang. Might want to swap out a Raven Frost ring, actually, if you're going to be doing this ring, just because getting frozen seems to happen quite frequently when Eldritch explodes. But yep, good clear speed on Pindleskin, no problems there. I was actually taking her through the Worldstone Keep a bit earlier too, and that works pretty well. She does pretty well in the Worldstone Keep, like I say. Again, Worldstone Keep really requires multiple elemental sources of damage. This is where some character, like an S tier character like the Blizzard Sorceress, might not really be able to do too well in here, just because there's so much randomness and variation and diversity. And the Meteorb Sorceress actually has a pretty good time in the Worldstone Keep. Again, kind of depending what your role. If you get some Death Lords or something like that, she might run into a bit of trouble. I interrupt this video to thank the 24,200 of you who have subscribed to the Old School GameStop channel. You guys are rock stars, gentlemen. You are beautiful souls and fabulous human beings. Thank you very much for the support. Alright, back to the video. When it comes to clearing out Bale and his minions, she's a little bit slower, not the fastest, not the best, but the whole level 85 Worldstone Keep, just level 1 and level 2, level 2, level 3, level 1 actually. All of these Worldstone Keep levels are areas which can drop the best gear in the game, so you can basically just farm these areas. You don't even need to do the boss kill, the final Bale kill, if you have any trouble with that. The Ancient Tunnels is also a perfectly viable place for this character to farm for high-end level 85 loot, and well, wouldn't that have been funny if that were lacquered plate? It is not. It's never been. Maybe one day. Anyways, yep, the Ancient Tunnels wouldn't be my first choice because it's a little bit harder to find than the pit, and you don't really need it because you have multiple elements. So the pit's easier to find and quicker to get to. Wait, that's saying the same thing twice. Quicker to find and easier to get to. That's saying the same thing again in a slightly different way. Anyway, the Ancient Tunnels, also a perfectly viable location. Now, as for the Chaos Sanctuary, can she do it here? Well, yes, but also it might not be her best ever area. That is because of the mix of fire and cold immunes. The fire immunes in particular, the Doom Knights, kind of get in the way of things sometimes, and if you're just trying to deal out which is the correct form of damage, you're constantly trying to steer at which monsters you're killing, and it's like, okay, which ones? Nope, that one's the wrong one, elements and the fires, and oh no, that one's immune to fire. It's like, oh no, hang on. So basically there's a lot of fire immune stuff in the Chaos Sanctuary, and because her frozen orb is not her primary source of power for takedown speed, Chaos Sanctuary is not her best area. She can do it, but it's not her best area. That being said, the River of Flame kind of has a random mix of monsters here and there, and it is also actually a level 85 area. And so the River of Flame, kind of depending on what balance of monsters you get, could be decent, right? These blood maggots, you can mix up your fireball, your meteor, your frozen orb. You can kind of, drop those big meteors down on these blood maggots and their little broods of things, and that can be actually a pretty good way to make use of your meteor, because these are one of the things that doesn't move around all that much, so that's kind of good. So yeah, River of Flame actually is a reasonably good farming spot for the Meteorb Sorceress. Anyway, I think that about wraps it up.